Good morning, Gamecock fans. Today is Wednesday, April 2nd, the year of our Lord 2025, and welcome to Coffee. I'm JC Shurburtt. Certainly happy that all of you have elected to tune in today, as always, and hope you're going to have a wonderful hump day. Just, it's a better day than Tuesday, like we say around here. Only thing good about Tuesday's tacos. We had some tacos last night. Arrachera. Very, very good. Very, very tasty. Made my Tuesday a little better. Anyway, uh, gosh, looking back at a win in baseball last night, that's something that hadn't happened in a while. The Gamecocks run rule Presbyterian 11-1. That's good. I think anytime you have a losing streak, the cure for that is to win. It doesn't matter really who you play. So everybody's feeling good. Gamecocks now go to Mississippi State, Duty Noble Field down in Starkville. It's really one of the cathedrals of college baseball. They've done a lot of work to it. I think it seats about 15,000. It's always been a high capacity stadium, but they got some condominiums in the outfield now. I mean, it is nice. The Bulldogs, though, are kind of in the same shape as the Gamecocks. They did win last night, 5-3 at Memphis. So they're 17-12 overall, identical record of the Gamecocks in the SEC at 1-8. So we're going to find out a lot about this baseball team here coming up. 21-7 is the overall conference record for the first three opponents. 16-2 the last two. The next two, Mississippi State and A&M, are 2-16, and then Ole Miss is 5-4. So that's 7-21. So I don't think anybody really wants to hear about the toughness of the SEC in this sport. This is a sport where the standards at South Carolina are higher. The head coach's standards, Paul Maneri's, that's higher than, I guess, being 1-8 in the league. But I do think that when you get to the end, you can look back and there's a scenario where, hey, look, it was just that they played a bunch of the best teams in America at the time. And then once the schedule kind of lightened up a bit, at least on paper, I think Mississippi State and Ole Miss and A&M are very talented. Then the Gamecocks could play some ball, win some games, and if they get back to a regional or whatever the fate may be, which with the strength of the SEC, it's going to be interesting to see as they talked about on the morning show yesterday what the committee's going to do as far as how many get in from the league and all that good stuff. But, get to a regional, maybe you catch fire, do well enough to host. I mean, it's happened around here before. The last time they started 1-8 in the SEC, they finished 13-11 back in the 90s, I believe, Ray Tanner, the early years of Coach Tanner. So, I mean, hey, who knows? It's baseball. But that's another thing I think that people are sick of hearing. They're sick of hearing about how tough it is in the SEC and how good everybody else is, and they're sick of hearing it's baseball. It's not been up to standard, obviously, so far, but through 30 games, but there's 26 left, and there's 21 left in the SEC, and you just got to go down to Starkville and hope that there's one of two things that are going to be true. Either the Gamecocks are indeed not very good and aren't going to be competing for postseason and all that, or not good enough to make it, or they played a bunch of good teams and that were just better, and they can go get better by playing teams that are kind of equal to them. So that's it's a fork in the road, and we're going to really know what direction it takes, I think, until after these next nine. What can the Gamecocks do in the next nine? Can they go 6-3 and kind of get out of the hole? And it's still an ugly record. I think that would make it 7-11 in the league, but that's 6-3 is pretty good. That means 3 series wins or a sweep in there somewhere. It gets them back on track for a regional, all that good stuff. So I honestly think this team against Tennessee did some really good things, and they played hard. They didn't always play well. The difference between playing well and playing hard. But There's some things that have happened. The lineup last night, they shook it up again. Looked pretty good. It was Presbyterian. It was close for a while. Then the floodgates opened. So, we'll see what kind of buttons Pulmonary can push and what kind of success they have this weekend. A series win would be very huge. Anytime you can win on the road against a good team, and even though Mississippi State is 1-8, I don't think anybody would argue that they're not talented. So we're going to find out some stuff. And I think you lose to PC last night, and I think the negativity, and I'm not talking about the fans, although there's been some inappropriate things out on X that I'm sure many of you are aware of, digging into players' personal lives and what they do after hours and all that. But the negativity just continues to go in terms of the feel, the dread, and I think that this baseball team this year has not been good at handling moments. John Whittle had a great article for VIP members on thebigspur.com about runners in scoring position, hitting, extra base hits, clutch plays, pitchers giving up home runs in key moments, ill-timed fielding errors, that kind of thing. And I think that when you lose, and it compacts everything, snowballs, compounds, not compacts. And so you don't really have the confidence to go and make those clutch plays in key moments. So nice win last night. You take them any way you can get them against anybody you can when you're on a 7-game losing streak. That streak is over. Mississippi State also, kind of like I said, got up off the mat, so to speak, and won a road game at Memphis. So they'll head over to northeastern Mississippi and Starkville. Just go to Tuscaloosa, take this highway. You lose cell phone service for a while. You go through Gordo, Alabama, home of former Gamecock and current Auburn quarterback Tanner Bailey. And then you kind of blink and you're in Starkville. So that's I've been there a couple times, and it's a haul. Once you get off I-20 and you're in T-Town, and you get on that road and go, there's other ways to go to. You can go through Tupelo and things like that. But anyway, hopefully it's a good weekend for the Gamecocks as far as baseball goes. First pitch is at 7, SEC Network Plus on Friday. So we'll see how it goes. I think Maneri and some of the players are going to talk to the media. So there'll be some coverage out there about that. Will Crow is co-hosting Inside the Gamecocks, the morning show this morning with Jamie Bradford. And so I'm sure they're going to dig into the team and all that good stuff. Former Gamecock pitcher, Major League pitcher Will Crow co-hosts the morning show on Wednesdays. And then Ashley Chastain Woodard, her team is still in the top 10, the softball coach at Carolina. They have a game tonight against Wofford, 6 p.m., Beckham Field. They'll be looking to continue their success after taking 2 of 3 at LSU this past weekend. And so they'll talk on the morning show with her today. Also, Matt Anderson, the late night Gamecock basketball bracketologist, kind of our resident basketball personality. His brother played major college basketball. Matt was a college basketball player, high school basketball player. He's tall if you ever meet him in person. So the late night Gamecock's going to come on to talk about this transfer portal class, incoming and outgoing. There was some news yesterday for Lamont Paris. Meechie Johnson, the news kind of broke at the end of the show. Meechie Johnson is coming back to home again, I guess, South Carolina, after and I don't know that I've ever seen this happen since we've had the portal, where a player leaves a school, comes to another school, then goes back to the previous school. That part's happened. Gilbert Edmond was an example in football of that happening. Also, Austin Stogner, remember, he came to Carolina from Oklahoma, went back to Oklahoma. So it's happened both ways in football. I don't think I've ever seen A-B. So he's back. Ohio State fans acted like a bunch of jerks on X. I'm not surprised. I was talking to my wife about that, and I was like, my goodness, as much as we think in Gamecock land that there's a little bit of toxic behavior on X and people being abusive to players, it was nothing compared to the reaction that Ohio State, and it was only Ohio State fans, and I figured it out. Ohio State's a large school, bunch of 60,000 students or so, which means a ton of alums. They have a ton of fans. Ohio's a big state. They're kind of the only game in town in Ohio. And so I'm like, well, their percentage of psychopaths is much higher than numbers wise, because you're dealing with about the radical, and they're not even really like diehard fans. They're just, I think, culturally people that like to get on X, and the whole social media thing has made them feel like that their opinion's very important, and and it's not. But I think it gets in people's minds sometimes, and that happens. But they so there's more of them, because there's more Ohio State fans. So it's just instead of having three knuckleheads, you got like 18 in the comment section. And so that was uncalled for. But it's like Phil Mullinax, the Mad Dog, put on X himself yesterday. He's like, Meechie's not the first person to come to South Carolina and then go back home to Ohio and then want to come back home to South Carolina. And of course, Mad Dog, I think, is talking about Myrtle Beach in the summertime. But I thought that was funny. But a lot of folks, when on the Gamecock end of things, the reaction actually was pretty positive. Meechie probably made a mistake going back. I think everybody understood the reasons why. You get to go back home. They were offered some money to come back. They were in a coaching transition. They almost hired Lamont Paris. Now that have happened. I don't think he would have left. I think he would have probably had a good year this year, and probably could have navigated some of the off the court things that caused him to not have the season he wanted to. But a coach that they kind of promoted from within, same old thing, and it didn't work out for him too well the first time, and didn't work out this time. But I think everybody understood at the time, and so hey, you get another year, get the waiver. He knows the system. I think when he's good, he's really, really good. I think that again, a 2-year NCAA tournament year, he played more within himself and kind of had the awareness to know, hey, it's not my night to score, and he was a pretty good passer when that happened. Now he'll jack up a 36-foot 3-pointer in a heartbeat, but hell, he makes some of them, And after last year, where it was just like, man, some of those shots they didn't even hit the backboard. I mean, it was not a great shooting experience this past year. Not a great offensive experience outside of Colin Murray Boyles and a couple of handful of guys from time to time. So I think you take him. Plus, like I said, he knows the concepts and system and all that. Really good athlete, and certainly a player that I think can contribute next season to the Gamecocks. There was also there was more news yesterday. It kind of got buried because I think it came out the same time, or Miles put it out the same time, and I don't know if this means that he got his waiver or he's just decided not to hit the portal, which happens these days. I don't really get it, but it happens. And so Miles Studi says he's coming back next year too. We reported at thebigspur.com it would be a surprise, shocker if he did not get the waiver. He and Meechie both, because Meechie technically is going to have a waiver. And look, tough break with the blood clots. That's serious. That goes beyond basketball with what happened to Miles this year. I think Miles Studi getting back to the role he had in 2023-24 when they went to the NCAA tournament, that's important. And he is a good shooter when he's on. Thankfully, the Clemson game this year, which was probably that and Arkansas and Texas were the biggest three biggest wins of the year. He was on, and Jamie Bradford called it the day of the game. He goes, I think Miles Studi's going to have a big game tonight. I'm like, okay. And he did. Lo and behold, the Gamecocks beat the Tigers, who had a really good year, despite being knocked out of the NCAA tournament by alum Will Wade, who's now the coach at NC State. But it was a big win, overtime win. You always want to beat those guys, right? Lamont Paris is 2-0 against Clemson in Columbia. Probably should have beaten him in Clemson a couple years ago, too. Anyway, so Studi coming back, I think as long as he's healthy, again, that's the most important thing. When you're talking about a 15 scholarship basketball roster, even a 13, that guy coming in when he's hot, again, he knows what to do. He's a leader. I think that would be good. That's good with me. So you got him. But then outbound, Cam Scott finally hits the portal. My understanding was Cam Scott himself kind of wouldn't mind sticking around, but the NIL money wasn't going to, or rev share money, whatever they're paying the guys now, that wasn't going to be, that was going down. And I guess other schools, I'm assuming he has most highly rated basketball guys like he have agents and people like that making decisions, helping to make decisions for him. So he's in the transfer portal. Just wish him the best. Some people talk about the big picture on that, and because you won't, the basketball program has struggled so much as far as you know keeping the top South Carolina talent from the high school ranks in the state. So you want guys when they do pick Carolina to have successful runs. It's not a magic bullet that means you're going to get everybody, but the more you have that have success, it's contagious. It's like in football when they turn that around. But I'll remind everybody in football, I mean, you had highly rated guys like Derek Watson and Demetrius Summers when this thing started to turn that did not pan out. You had highly rated guys under Spurrier from the state that did not work out, but you had a bunch that did. And so I think South Carolina basketball, as far as in-state goes, number one, as long as Kerry Rich is on the staff, they're going to have good relationships locally, which is a change. Not that Frank Martin and I'll just go as far as Frank Martin. Not that he didn't try to build relationships, but it's very frustrating for him as far as the basketball community in South Carolina. But Lamont Paris and Kerry Rich have a good one. And if you think about it, and this will bring me to my next basketball topic, and then we'll get to football. Gigi Jackson came to Carolina, and he was drafted, and he's in the pros. Had a good rookie year. Not sure about this year. Not sure about the Memphis Grizzlies as an organization, but Gigi's doing good, making money. He's happy to go to Carolina. He's come back and talked the program up. That was big. Not a memorable season for him as far as team accomplishments go, but he came and not a lot of All-American types were knocking down the door to come to play for Lamont Paris when he got there. So that was big. And then Colin Murray Boyles, which is a big subject right now. No matter when he goes to the NBA, be it sooner or later, that's another local player. Colin was not. He was kind of a late bloomer. He went out to Utah for his senior year. He was at AC Flora before that. He's actually at AC Flora when he committed. So Colin, that's another local success story if you get right down to it. So, and they're both Columbia area kids too. It's a little different recruiting other parts of the state in basketball than Columbia. Columbia is such a basketball hotbed, right? I mean, Dawn Staley, that's part of the way she built it by saying, okay, you're Asia Wilson, those types, getting them in the boat, keeping them at home. Now it's Joyce Edwards and Malaysia Fulwiley. I mean, that gets kind of contagious at home, and it's rarely happened. Eddie Fogler in the 90s, before there was such an emphasis on AAU, had a good relationship with the high school coaches in the state and got BJ Mackey, guys like that. Just about every highly rated guy from South Carolina. Two exceptions were Jerome Harper, who went to prep school and just really needed to get out of the state. Mike Morgan mentioned something about that yesterday. Just needed to change his scenery, ended up going to Cincinnati, and then Of course, Ray Allen was a player that they just missed. What is it about good basketball players from Sumter? I mean, because that's John Morant and Ray Allen. Now, Frank Martin, to his credit, was the only power conference coach that offered John Morant and took the time to go evaluate him. But they were too late, and for whatever reason, he went to Murray State. Of course, Ray Allen was a military kid and went to UConn, and I remember because my sophomore year, he was on Hillcrest Dalzell, which is a closed school. It became Crestwood or Lakewood won. They beat my Burns Rebels in the state championship game. So I knew Ray Allen, but he went to UConn and, of course, became Ray Allen. Um, but that was really, those were only ones he actually missed. Jermaine O'Neal and Kevin Garnett obviously went straight to the pros. There's all kinds of different philosophies or rumors or theories about would Garnett have come to South Carolina, would O'Neal have come to South Carolina. Some say one or the other, some say both. Anyway, that's the last time South Carolina really controlled the state as far as basketball talent goes, and that was before AAU. So I think Lamont Paris has done enough again with Kerry Rich there to where they'll be fine within the state, even though Cam Scott's out. Jamari Thomas also hit the transfer portal. Jamari is going to need a waiver. So we'll see what happens there for him moving forward. I think Jamari is a good player, just not a fit for what they do. Certainly did help in game scoring and things like that. I don't think he stinks. And obviously he was a really good ball handler. You know, when he was out, there were stretches in games, but and close games, and Carolina would lose. But you certainly wish him the best. So the Colin Murray Bulls decision is important for this basketball program and next season. I think if you get him back, you're kind of looking for a point guard still, and it's one of those things where I think I felt better about that than I did than I do now. So we'll see what happens. And then if Murray Boyles leaves, you probably need another big. We'll see. But Trayson Eaglestaff from North Dakota, Krista Sandico from Providence, big man, and then Meechie. That's a pretty strong group. You throw Colin Murray Boyles in there, I think that's something that you can really kind of get excited about. As far as reversing the losing trend. So we'll see what happens. Lots of some changes in the SEC already. Coaching change. Buzz Williams hightails it to Maryland. That Trev Alberts for A&M. I'll talk more about this on the show. Probably not the best AD hire. If you folks out there that love to talk about the ADs want to know an example of a bad AD, look no further than Trev Alberts. That guy, I mean, when you have good coaches walking out the door, you had a baseball coach walk out the door and go to your rival right after playing for the national championship. Then you let the players talk you into replacing him with their buddy, and they're 1-8 in the league with all that talent. Buzz Williams, who when he took the A&M job and left Virginia Tech, was going home to Texas, and I kind of thought he'd built a national power there, and they have won pretty well. I mean, history of A&M basketball prior to Billy Gillespie, and then they built a new arena, and then they got a lot better. But history of A&M basketball is not super duper through the years. I thought, man, Buzz Williams, but Carolina actually handled them pretty good. Most of the time they played, and under Frank and then under Lamont. But I never thought he'd leave A&M. Well, he left A&M. And there were documented cases of Trev Alberts firing people and being tight with money. How are you going to be tight with money at Texas A&M? Their whole path to success is based on money. Anyway, we'll talk more about that later, but there could be some more coaching moves. The word is out there they're going to go after Chris Beard from Ole Miss and try to get him to come back to Texas. I don't think they're wrong. I think he's one of the best coaches in the country. So enough basketball. Football, yesterday, Shane Beamer met with the media, and there's some not so good news on the injury front. Two transfer portal players that are new to the program are on the injured list already. Jaylen Brown, kind of funny. We just talked about Jaylen Brown. I got a tip on this. And but before I'll report about an injury, because it usually freaks a lot of people out, I want to get some confirmation, and because you don't know if, I mean, man, I learned my lesson in '08. There were one of the people, I knew somebody that was kind of at practice, and Jared Cook, you guys remember him before the Kentucky game. I got some info. Well, he's out with a sprained whatever, not going to play. And sure enough, he played. Not only played well. And the Gamecocks, I was sitting there in Lexington. The Gamecocks won. That was in '08, right when we started Big Spur. I learned my lesson then. Be very, very careful with what you put out about injuries. And that was back when coaches were much more forthcoming with injury situations. Of course, it was also before you had to put a list out. But on game week, conference games, whatever. But so I'm very careful with that. So I got a kind of tip on it. And I was like, well, then Sterling Lucas talked about him, and I was like, well, it sounds like maybe it's minor, but he's out for the rest of the spring, and that's a blow if it lingers. It's a blow regardless because he's new, and although he played in an SEC program last year, the way Carolina practices, the way they do things, most of the newcomers talk about that it's different. And so anytime you do something different in life, including football, there's an adjustment period. And so with that, you kind of want him to get anybody that's new, you want him to get as many reps as possible. So he's shelved for the rest of the spring. Nick Sharpe, from Wake Forest, 6'3", 340-pound guard, is out for the rest of the spring, according to Beamer. That's certainly a position that both positions they didn't want to have injuries at. Nick Sharpe was not, when I was kind of projecting starters the other day, wasn't on the projected starter list, but that's probably one of the reasons why I hadn't heard much about him. So he's out. Michael Smith's out, the tight end, for the rest of the spring. We knew that. Brubaker out. And then freshman Caleb Williams, we knew he was injured. Beamer previously reported that. And Travian Robertson, during his media availability, talked about how he just needs to get healthy. The true freshman from Virginia, who's actually been there since bowl practice. Caleb came in with the receivers. Big upside guy. So with Caleb Williams, Brubaker was the number 2 center last year. I hate it for him because he struggled with injuries during his career here. But they have Rodney Newsome Jr. and Marquis Anderson's taking reps at center. With Michael Smith, I think this helps guys like, Jordan Dingle get a lot of reps. Maurice Brown is getting a lot of reps at tight end. And then Brady Hunt, who's back and healthy and practicing, getting a lot of reps at tight end. Certainly want Michael Smith back by the season because he's such a freak athlete. And he's one of the potential breakout players on this roster. If you don't get him back, you're thin at tight end and can't afford any injuries. But Jordan Dingle's presence on the roster becomes much more important, I think. And I think Brady Hunt, too, had a very trying year last year. By the end, it's just kind of one of those things that happens. He starts to play really well, makes the play of the season against Missouri, catching that pass. Blocking got much better, really kind of feeling his way in. Because keep in mind, Brady Hunt was out the whole previous year at Ball State with an injury. So he's kind of feeling his way. But sometimes that happens with guys. It takes them a year to kind of get back in the swing of things, especially when you go from the MAC to the SEC. And then he gets hurt. So, man, they're lining up Jatavius Shivers at tight end, things like that. So I'm looking at it, and I think, I think tight end, that's a spot that, you just kind of hopeful everybody gets healthy. They do have Mike Tyler coming in as a true freshman this summer from over in Hammond. I think just looking at players that come from that level of high school football in South Carolina, Jordan Birch and Boogie Huntley included, there is an adjustment period, maybe more so than with other guys that don't play Skeeza. And that's not a shot at Skeeza. It's just, everybody said that about Birch. I mean, the coaches included. So you got Mike Tyler. I don't know, would they play Shivers in the unbalanced line like they did last year? That's a possibility. Shivers is the backup right tackle. The most significant one, I think, when looking at it, is Brown, just because of who he is, what he is, the feedback I've gotten from him. I penciled him in, I'm sorry, penciled him. Yeah, it's all in pencil. Projected him as a starter, the starter opposite Dylan Stewart when the season started. I just thought long term he would win out. With him missing the rest of spring, I think Brian Thomas Jr. would probably be my projection now. I'm probably going to release an updated projected starters list on thebigspur.com for VIP members and talk about it. So, not that Brown can't come back and ultimately start. There's a long way to go. I don't know the severity of the injury. I think I'm pretty sure it's a lower body injury. So we'll see what happens there. I that's the one that worries me. Obviously, I think Nick Sharpe, transfer portal offensive lineman. You never, you look now. Sharpe and Brubaker. That's two down already on the offensive line. You don't want that to linger on into the season, obviously, because everybody's kind of got bad memories of 2 years ago. There's more depth this year, obviously, with that. And then with Caleb Williams, probably does undercut his ability to get in and play a lot this season, but I think he and Christian Ingram both were not players at defensive tackle they necessarily were thinking would go in and play a ton of snaps. It was kind of like, well, if one of them makes it up to the top 6 or 7, great, but I never projected that. I do think by the time next year rolls around, he and Ingram both are going to be really good in 2026. With injuries in general in the spring, you just sort of gotta, because there's no info out there about, they don't say, well, he's not only out for the spring, he's probably going to miss a season. You don't hear that. I haven't heard that behind the scenes, other than he got shaken up and it was a lower body. And then Beamer said he's going to miss the rest of spring. You just hope it's not too serious. Because they need him, I think, for all the reasons I've stated, plus that position flexibility thing that Sterling Lucas talked about the other day. I'm very high on Jaylen Brown and the way he can move for a 270-pounder. I mean, just a guy that Missouri, the coach, it's a very rare position coach, gets on Twitter or X when he loses a guy in the portal and says, I didn't want him to leave. I love the kid. I wish him the best. He made a family decision. Hats off to who his name escapes me. He's Missouri D-line coach. Hats off to that guy. So, I think with injuries during the spring, it's fine to be cautious. I would not panic. I don't want this list to grow, obviously. There is some good news from the Beamer press conference yesterday with Vakari Swain. We talked about it on the show yesterday. As I thought, it's an academic issue. He didn't flunk out of school, all that good stuff. But Beamer said it's nothing that's going to keep him from playing this year. So that's good because he's a hell of a player. And Carolina does have some depth and options in the secondary, but you can never have too many. And Vakari Swain is good enough to start. I mean, I'll be honest. I think Vakari Swain, Judge Collier as the two corners, that sounds good to me. With Brandon Cisse and Miles Norwood, maybe Cisse ends up playing nickel and they do slide Kilgore back. I certainly understand why they haven't slid Kilgore back. Maybe Cisse takes some reps at safety. Who knows? He's a good player too. Miles Norwood certainly is a good coverage guy. And then you got Jalewis Solomon in the mix. So there's lots of options, if Vakari Swain couldn't go. But I love me some Vakari Swain. I also think here's something nobody talks about in the return game. that's a guy that can really help you and help the Gamecocks next year. We don't know who the returners are necessarily going to be. It was Juju McDowell last year. Really would be nice if the Gamecocks could get that part of it going on special teams. I think Xavier Legette obviously with kickoff return was dangerous, but I think last year's kickoff returns and there's not that many these days kickoff returns, right? Everybody's kicking it through the end zone, but maybe I kind of intrigued kickoff return wise, but maybe one of the running backs and Nick Harbor, or maybe Vakari Swain and Nick Harbor. I think punt return wise, I love Vakari. I love that thought. Now, who knows who will ultimately be the punt returner? A lot of those receivers are going to be in the mix. Jaden Sellers, Pup Sellers, is going to be a guy. I don't know about this year, but eventually, I think he'll factor into the return game. So that's important too. That's cheap yardage you can get on somebody. So anyway, with the injuries and all the updates from practice, like I said, I don't know that any of these guys will end up having situations that linger, but I can't rule it out. So, not time to panic yet. You got to look at the depth, who's next man up, that kind of thing. And not all these guys were starters. I mean, Nick Sharpe, I don't know that he would have started. I projected Brown to start. That's my opinion. Thomas Jr. could have started over him or somebody else. Brubaker was not a projected starter. Caleb Williams was not a projected starter. Michael Smith was. So even if they're all out, there's other guys. But you don't want this list to grow beyond anything minor. We've all lived through that before. That's the quickest thing. People call it excuses. The SEC is a game of attrition in a lot of ways, and having an abnormal amount of ridiculous injuries to key players that torpedoes your depth is sometimes the difference between 7 wins and 9 wins, or 7 wins and 5 wins, or 8 wins and 4 wins, just depending on who it is. And you don't want another run with that. I will point one final thing out, then I got to go. And I apologize for 2 things here on Coffee. Number one, the other sports segment today besides football went long. I know some of you just listened for football. But when you have a lot of news like that in games and we're in season, that's going to happen. You can always fast forward, right? But I did notice that lingered. Number 2, this is going up a little late. There was where I'm recording it in my home. There was a severe thunderstorm that came through this morning, and it was so loud on the roof. You would have had a lot of noise coming through. So I delayed, and then my microphone got knocked out for a little bit. Anyway, just some housekeeping notes there. But one final thing on this, I will point out, Smith and Brubaker were known. They're players that have been in the program. The other 3 are new. So, when you're talking about, the program with nutrition and strength and conditioning, and I don't think, I think strength coaches are really not as relevant. Strength programs are not as relevant to avoiding injuries as people may think, but I do know this. They made some adjustments in the strength program last offseason. The players looked physically demonstrably different. Before there were before and after pictures. Go look at Dylan Stewart's and other guys once the season got there. And Carolina did have injuries. I mean, the receiving core was certainly one. Lenore Sellers had to miss. Rocket Sanders had to miss. It's part of the game. You're not going to avoid it. But you didn't have the massive amount of injuries, especially at one position that you had in 2023. Chances of that happening 2 years in a row are kind of slim, but I thought the strength program, the nutrition program, all that stuff took a step forward last offseason. But these guys that have gotten banged up, keep in mind, before any of you that are in the 2% that want to go running to message boards or Twitter and call out Luke Day and those guys for injuries, keep in mind these guys are all new. So maybe, maybe there's something to be said for that. Not that not being at Carolina's and in their strength program makes you injury prone. It's just, it's just kind of interesting to me that you got a true freshman and two transfer portal guys out of the five that are down right now. Um, so I think that says more about the positivity of the players, because a lot of this is up to the players. They have to work hard, take care of their body, do the nutrition, all that good stuff, follow the plan. It's more of a testament to the players and the buy-in, maybe so, than just like a strength coach or nutritionist. Um, I think that's a positive though that you kind of look at it. If you're going to find a silver lining here, that these guys, you have guys that three of the five are new, and that doesn't, like I said, that just means to me that your other people that are coming back are healthy and in good shape. So there's a tiny silver lining there. I don't know if that came out well. Anyway, be sure to check out the morning show. Ashley Chastain Woodard will be on. Will Crow will be on. Matt Anderson, the late night Gamecock, will be on. So a very busy morning show. It starts at 10 on the Chief Sports app, right here on YouTube on Chief South Carolina. I'll be back with the show with Phil. We're going to roll over some topics today. Probably going to be a little more organized today. We're going to talk basketball, coaching, jobs, little baseball, lots of football topics, things like that, and all that good stuff. All right. Thank you for joining us on Coffee. Shout out to Palmetto Golf and Belts, one of our sponsors, palmettogolfing.com. Don't forget, they are running a sale. It's almost Masters time, so check all that out. JC Shurburtt signing off. Holla at you soon. This has been Coffee. Y'all be good.